I mentioned the 15 grand that was appropriated to assist French refugees, and the father of the Constitution, James Madison, said there's no authority for that in the Constitution. James Monroe was the 5th president of the United States. He only cast one veto, and that veto was against a bill that Congress drafted for money to expand the Cumberland Road. It would have gone through Virginia, James Monroe's home state, and it would have benefited his state economically. And he said there is no authority for that whatsoever in the Constitution. So you're going to tax people in another state for a road in somebody else's state? There's no authority for that in the Constitution. How many times have you heard both Democrats and Republicans talk about our crumbling infrastructure, bridges that are crumbling all over the country? Meaning it's your problem. If a bridge in Michigan, in Minnesota, is crumbling, it's your problem in your state. Throw something in the kitty and refurbish it. Franklin Pierce was our 14th president. He vetoed a bill to help the mentally ill, 1854. And he said, and I'm quoting, "I cannot find any authority in the Constitution for public charity," close quote. He also said this, spending, quote, "would be contrary to the letter and the spirit of the Constitution and subversive to the whole theory upon which the union of these states is founded," end of quote. There's one other president other than Donald Trump to have 2 non-consecutive terms. The first was President Grover Cleveland. He was 22nd and 24th president. In 1887, he vetoed an appropriation to help drought-stricken counties in Texas. Quote, "I feel obliged to withhold my approval of the plan to indulge in benevolent and charitable sentiment through the appropriation of public funds. I find no warrant for such an appropriation in the Constitution," end of quote. Ronald Reagan, 1960, gave a speech in which he talked about how they get government bigger and bigger by first having a program, he said, for example, for medical care for the elderly. He said, after all, who is going to attack a program for the elderly? And a few years later, we had Medicare. And Reagan said, then after that, they're going to offer a program for children. Who's going to attack that? And then before you know it, government is in control of our health care. But don't forget what then Senator Obama said. If I was starting from scratch, I would have single payer. Now we've gotten to the point where taxpayers pay for 50%, 50 cents on the dollar, spent on health care, which is exactly what Ronald Reagan predicted. And the Democrats' goal is single payer. They don't say that. They call it public option because it sounds less offensive. This is where we are. And as my caller just said, writer just said, Republicans have sat there and let this happen. Bigger and bigger and bigger. The Founding Fathers did not intend for there to be an income tax. The Constitution had to be amended for that. They wanted the limited duties and obligations of the federal government to be funded by duties and tariffs. Government is about 80% larger than the Founding Fathers intended. 80%. Is there a stomach to cut it? No.
For full shows, live and on demand, it's Salem News Channel.